The Explorer Timberline is dead. Long live the Explorer Tremor. What's up, folks? I'm Dave Undercoffler, editor-in-chief of Autolist.com, a sister company to CarGurus. This is the first ever Ford Explorer Tremor model. It's an off-road oriented trim that replaces the Timberline in Ford's Explorer lineup. Like other Tremor models that Ford makes of the F-Series pickup trucks, the Maverick, the Ranger, and the Expedition, this has some trail-friendly upgrades, including a beefier suspension, more ground clearance, and more aggressive tires, a skid plate and underbody protection, a limited slip differential, off-road recovery hooks, and a dedicated off-road driving mode. So is all that enough to top other off-road wannabes like the Nissan Pathfinder Rock Creek, the Honda Pilot TrailSport, the Chevy Traverse Z71, and the Hyundai Palisade XRT? Let's go spend some time with this and find out. But before we do, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you can get alerts on all of our future updates. All right, let's start by talking about pricing. The Tremor sits just below the ST and the Platinum towards the high end of Ford's Explorer lineup. This Tremor starts at about $50,000, including destination, for the smaller engine. We'll get into that detail in just a minute. We're testing the fully loaded version with a twin-turbo V6 and a bunch of other goodies. So everything as you see it here is about $64,000, including destination. All right, now let's take a look at the exterior. Remember, the Explorer did get a refresh for the 2025 model year, so that gives us this slightly more modern look than the previous generation. So to set the Tremor apart from other models in the Explorer lineup, there are a couple of things to look for. First is you're gonna see this color. This is called Electric Spice Orange. It's sort of sprinkled throughout the inside and outside of this car. You've also got LED trail lights here. These will actually only work when the high beams are on, but they are pretty effective. You've also got recovery hooks down below. Again, those are in the Electric Spice color. And then finally down below, as we mentioned, there is a real skid plate and it's actually metal. Sometimes you see plastic versions on other off-road vehicles, so it's nice to see you've got the real deal on this Ford. Turning to the side here, the Tremor version is actually pretty discreet. The first thing you're gonna notice are these unique wheels. These are 18-inch alloy wheels with 31-inch Bridgestone off-road oriented tires on them. The overall Tremor version sits about an inch higher, depending on the trim you're comparing it to. This is about an inch higher than other Explorer trims. It also means it has the most ground clearance of anything else in the segment, so that is pretty cool. And then finally, you've got that Electric Spice color on the rims, highlighting where the valve stem is. Finally, at the back of this Explorer, there's really not much that differentiates the Tremor from the rest of the Explorer lineup. You do have the large Tremor badging. That's the only place you're gonna see it on the outside of this vehicle. And then a little bit of that Electric Spice down here. And then unlike up front where the skid plate is metal, this piece is actually plastic, but what it's doing is hiding two exhaust tips. And then in the middle, you've got a trailer hitch. This is rated to tow up to 5,000 pounds. That's good, but it's not the segment leader. That would be the Nissan Pathfinder Rock Creek, which can tow 6,000 pounds. All right, let's talk powertrains. As we mentioned earlier, two different engines are available on this Explorer Tremor. The base is a 2.3 liter EcoBoost turbocharged four-cylinder. It makes 300 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. It's rated by the EPA at 19 miles per gallon in the city and 23 on the highway. If that four-cylinder isn't powerful enough, you can step up to what we're testing today. This is the optional engine. It is a 3-liter twin-turbocharged V6 engine. It makes 400 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. Although for models built after the middle of April 2026, this horsepower figure drops to 385. Fuel economy ratings for this twin-turbo version are 17 miles per gallon in the city and 22 on the highway. Regardless of which engine you choose, both Tremor models have a 10-speed automatic transmission and standard four-wheel drive. All right, let's take a look at the interior. As I mentioned earlier, Ford gave the Explorer a bit of a refresh for the 2025 model year, and one of the big things that changed was the interior, and it was for the better. You now have a 13.2-inch screen right here for the infotainment system. That's pretty cool. And then in front of me, I've got a fully digital 12.2-inch screen that is also configurable. Right now, I've got it set up for the maps display, but you can have a number of other different displays there as well. A couple of things I like about this screen. First, the system itself is very fast. The screen is bright. It uses Google built-in, so it has Google Maps as the default navigation system. And then down below, fixed on the screen at all times, are buttons for the climate control. Now, they're not physical buttons, they're built into the screen, but I like that they're there at all times rather than needing to pop up. If you do want some more functions for the climate control, you just hit that and those will pop up on the screen. But overall, nicely laid out here. As you might imagine, we also have wireless CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity, so that's pretty cool. So overall, Ford did a really nice job in upgrading the infotainment infotainment system. I also like the configurability of the display in front of the driver, so that's a nice touch. And then finally down below, Ford kept a physical knob for the volume control. If you've seen our videos before, you know it drives me nuts when everything is hidden behind touch-sensitive buttons or panels or in the screen. So it's nice to have an old-school analog knob right there. And then next to that knob, you've got a few more physical buttons for various functions in the cabin. Down in the center console, you've got a nice setup for really good space and functionality. You've got a space for your phone over here that sort of tucks nicely out of the way, kind of holds it secure. More storage space down below. You've got a pair of USB charge ports, the original USB and then a USB-C. Pair of cup holders, and then the rotary knob for the shifter. You then also have additional space down below, and then a drive mode select button right here. And as we mentioned earlier, this test model has the ultimate package. So in addition to that 400 horsepower engine, there are a number of goodies on the interior of this Tremor. That includes this panoramic glass roof. It doesn't open, but the sunshade moves all the way back, gives you really nice visibility inside the cabin. We also have massaging front seats up here for the driver and the passenger, a 14-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system, and Ford's excellent Blue Cruise hands-free driving system. So while all of that is well and good, there are a few things that I don't like about the cabin of this Explorer, and that's mainly the materials. Remember, this is a $64,000 vehicle, and some of these plastics just feel a little too cheap for something this expensive. I'm not sure how well these are going to age. They might scratch pretty easily, and just over time, they're going to look pretty cheap. So that is a little frustrating, but overall, not a deal breaker. And while we're talking trim, you do have some Tremor-specific design elements inside this Explorer. That includes this contrast stitching, which is again in that electric spice color. You've got the Tremor embroidered into the seats, again in that color. And then the seats themselves are really comfortable. You've got this really nice bolstering on the side, and then this fake suede material in the middle. All right, now to second row space in this Explorer. The Tremor comes standard with 2 captain's chairs, so that's pretty cool. They slide fore and aft, which is another nice feature. But one thing I want to point out is that legroom is good but not great, considering some of its rivals are going to have more room because they're longer overall. I'm 6'1". I've got the driver's seat to where I would have it if I'm sitting up there. So basically I'm sitting behind myself. And as you can see, plenty of space right now for my legs, my feet. But if you do need to move this seat up more, for the people in the back, it's going to get a little tight, and it's going to be tighter in this Explorer than it will in some of the rivals. So just something to consider. These seats themselves are quite comfortable. You can recline them. They've got their own armrest right here. And then like the front seats, you've got the Tremor stitching and then the 2 materials on the seats themselves. So quite comfortable. You also have some more amenities down here. We have our own climate control system, including 2-stage heated seats for both of these 2 seats. Finally, down below, you've got a pair of USB-C charge ports. You've got a 110-volt household outlet, and then a pair of cup holders that pop out if you need them. All right, now to third row space. And to give you a sense of how well adults fit back here, I've got the driver's seat and this middle seat set to where I would have it. So basically there's 3 of me sitting behind one another. Again, I'm 6'1", and I've got decent room. It's not super tight. My knees are hitting the back of the seat just a little bit, but it's not too tight, not too cramped. There's tons of headroom, so that is pretty nice. This seat cushion does sit low. It's down close to the floor, so that means my knees are up a little higher than I might like. But overall, an adult could be back here for a longer period of time without being too scrunched. Now, it is tighter back here than many of the rivals you will find in this 3-row crossover segment. So something like a Volkswagen Atlas or the Hyundai Palisade are definitely going to give you more room back here. But for what it is, a third row you're going to use sometimes, but not all the time, I think this definitely works for adults and for kids. And then in terms of amenities, it's pretty sparse back here. You do have your own air vents for the climate control. There's a pair of USB-C charge ports over here, and then each side gets a cup holder. I will say some of the plastics that Ford uses back here are pretty cheap and flimsy, so over time these are going to show a lot of wear and tear. Finally, at the back, this Explorer has 16.3 cubic feet of space behind the third row of seats. They do fold pretty easily at the touch of a button. That power folding feature comes standard on the Tremor trim. That gives you quite a bit more space. If that's not enough, the second row also folds, and then you'll have up to 85 cubic feet of space. That's quite a bit, but if you're shopping against some of the other models in this segment, something like the Chevy Traverse or the Nissan Pathfinder, those models are definitely going to have more cargo space and interior capacity. If you need a little more room back here behind the third row, this does pull out and there's a little bit more space down below. All right, next up, driving impressions. And as you might imagine, 400 horsepower is a lot in this Explorer. It's segment leading. You're not going to find anything with more power. And frankly, It's not too much, but you don't need this much power day to day. It's nice to have. I'm glad I'm enjoying it. It's fun. But if you're considering getting the Tremor trim in the Explorer, I think you'd be fine with just the base engine. A, that saves you 12 grand. You don't have to upgrade. But B, 400 is almost overkill in this car. So certainly fun, but don't think you need it. Otherwise, the rest of the driving experience is really pretty good. The 10-speed automatic transmission is nicely programmed. It stays out of the way. It gives you shifts when you want them. It doesn't give them when you don't want them. So that's really nice to have. The ride quality and the refinement of this vehicle is pretty nice. One ancillary benefit to all of these off-road packages that automakers are starting to add is that the tires that they come with have more sidewall. So the ride quality is a little squishier, but in a good way. They don't have these super thin profiles that sort of create this jarring ride. So the ride quality in this Explorer, certainly very comfortable, but also you're gonna have that capability when you do get onto trails or more dusty, dirty roads. As I mentioned, this feels pretty refined on the road. There's not a lot of wind noise or road noise coming into the cabin. The seats themselves are very comfortable. They hold you in place. I've got this nice leather wrapped steering wheel. It's also heated. So overall, really enjoyable, pleasant driving experience. It kind of lives up to that $64,000 price tag. It feels near luxury, and then you've got that off-road capability in your back pocket. This Explorer also has different drive modes. There's a sport mode, and Ford did a really nice job with that one. It really allows you to wring out all of those 400 horsepower if you're in a hurry. There's also an off-road mode, and the nice thing about that is while it's engaged, it then brings up the cameras and uses any number of cameras on the vehicle to display on the screen here what's going on in front of you, behind you, or side to side. So that's a really nice use of cameras, and it's a pretty cool trick up the Tremor's sleeve. Finally, in terms of visibility, it's good but not great in this Explorer. You've got great view out in front of you. This A pillar is on the thin side, so that's kind of nice. The B pillar over my shoulder is pretty thick, so that kind of gets in the way. And then there's a grab bar bolted to it. So when you're looking over your shoulder, there's a lot in your way. That is a little frustrating. And then when you have the third row of seats up, including the headrests, as I do right now, those headrests are enormous. They're like giant paddles. They do get in the way. So it's nice to fold those out of the way and get the seats down when you're not using them. All right, folks, there you have it. Our review of the 2026 Ford Explorer Tremor. Pros, well, we like that this has meaningful off-road upgrades, including the revised suspension and beefier tires that give you more ground clearance, plus those skid plates and underbody protection. We also like the levels of tech inside the cabin. The infotainment screen and system is really nicely set up and easy to use. And finally, there's plenty of useful space inside this cabin, despite it not being the biggest in the segment. Cons? Well, as we mentioned, there's a lot of cheap plastic throughout the cabin of this Explorer, and that's the kind of stuff that can age pretty poorly. We also don't love the fact that to get this twin turbocharged engine, you have to spend $12,000 to get the overall option package. Yes, it comes with plenty of other goodies, but we wish the engine itself were a separate standalone option. And then finally, some of these exterior trim bits, including this electric spice color, may not be for everyone. But overall, we do like what Ford has done with this Tremor package. It gives it some viable off-road abilities without sacrificing its everyday on-road use case. Sticking with that smaller and cheaper engine option gives you an overall package that's really nice no matter how you're going to use it. So for reviews or listings of this Ford or anything else you're shopping for, new or used, be sure to check out CarGurus.com. And CarGurus now has a podcast that's called The Driveway, featuring yours truly and the rest of our great content team. Be sure to check it out wherever you get your other favorite podcasts. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel so you can get alerts on all of our future updates. We'll see you out there.